Okay, so I've got everything set up here. We're going to start doing the apple blossom painting. I'm going to do the first study in oils using the squared thumbnail that I have right there. So you can follow along. You can paint along with me if you'd like. It's going to be a study, so I'm not going to get too highly detailed and do all the fine details on this one. But I want to get a handle on if this is a painting that should have the finer details on it. Do I actually finish down and complete it? Or do we just kind of let it sit by the wayside? We shall see. Okay, I thought I'd show you what's going on. I have my little setup where holding the camera in place. The reference photo on the laptop, my clean palette. There is the study, the thumbnail sketch, the squared one. I'm going to go with that one and with those colors. Clean palette. I'm going to be laying out my paints. So let me just get this settled in and let's get started. So I have the palette and I'm figuring out my colors. I'm just going to go with a primary limited palette, deciding on which yellow to use. And in this painting, I'm going to go with a lemon yellow and use raw umber rather than the burnt sienna. Burnt sienna I usually use in the landscapes here because the rocks are generally very warm. But this is a mountain scene and it's cooler up there, and it works better to have a cooler earth tone like the raw umber. And you know, coming in to do a complicated painting with all sorts of stuff in it, it's always good to just come in and kind of create your Notan on the canvas, or at least a 3-value sketch. Here I'm just getting the placement of the shapes. And it was really helpful to me when I'm doing this kind of thing is to go in and wipe out the lights so that I can establish, you know, the movement of this particular composition and get a sense of where the flowers are going, get a sense of where the darks are, and how to work it all together. I'm going to create a circular motion for the composition, which can be helpful with complicated flower scenes. You know, when you have lots and lots of flowers, you want to keep the eye moving around. And, you know, if you go back and look at the thumbnail sketch and the color study, right, it's kind of using these basic shapes. I'm going to be using liquid for this color study. I usually do, and establish the darks. I will go back in if I do a large painting of this where I'll use my my mediums, the ones that I make. There's a video on that. I'll link it up above so that you can see and put it in the show notes as well. So coming in and just placing in the darks, I'm altering the colors, adding some red, on other areas adding more blue, and just begin to work in the specks of the sky. You know, you want to keep things loose, which is a lesson for me. I tend to paint tightly, just too tight. And so lately I have been making a conscious effort to loosen up with that. And that's why these studies are really wonderful, because they can get you to work on some of the things that are not working well in your painting. Coming in, I want to do the flowers that are more in the background, and just creating the sense of back. I almost always work from back to front. So when I get a background established, then it's easier for me to come in and do this major shape, this longish shape, diagonal throughout the painting, and I just kind of work in the flowers that are in the light and the petals of the flowers that are in shadow, and keeping with that roundish, maybe spiral kind of movement throughout the composition and the design of the painting. So again, we're looking at the large shapes and working them down into smaller shapes within the large shape. So that's kind of how you want to go. And here I'm just cleaning up my palette and moving, making two piles, one a warm grayish pile and the other a dark grayish pile, and cleaning up the palette. And it's important to do that, keep your area free of clutter, just have it nice and simple, and it reestablishes and feeds your creativity. At least it does for me. So I'm coming in with that light gray, orangish gray color, and putting in the center of the flowers, these apple blossoms, and just beginning to separate them and create them, working with the reference photo now, more specifically to get the flowers in place. And still staying loose and working subtly with the shadow colors and the light colors, and where do I want to have the most the highest contrast, which is going to be in that upper leaf, which does pretty much fall in that golden ratio area. And that's all I'm going to do for today. So as you can see, it came along pretty nicely using just a primary limited palette with raw umber this time, because I want a cooler feel of everything around it, so that the pinks and the warmth of the blossoms can come through and have a stronger contrast and just be there. The trick when you're painting a lot of different flowers is getting out of the idea that you have to paint each flower. What you have to do is keep everything connected in some way, so that there are general shapes happening. And within those shapes, you can differentiate different flowers, but you do not go in and paint every tiny little bit of the flower as is. It's too much of a jumble. The eye cannot follow it, and you're not creating art, you're creating a copy. We don't want a copy. We want to use the reference photo to our advantage, so that we can take the larger shapes of the flowers in a bunch, as you can see, the movement happening in the different shapes between the darks and the lights, and that will create your painting. And that is why you do your Notan. And that is why you do color sketches afterwards when you have a strong Notan. Tomorrow I will be back and we will do the next stage of this painting.